The information shared on CNS Unfiltered is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any health or lifestyle changes. The views shared are those of guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Innate Clinical Nutrition or its affiliates. This episode includes affiliate links, which help support the show. Hello and welcome. I am Jenna Salisbury, and this is CNS Unfiltered, a show where clinical nutrition specialists uncover what traditional medicine overlooks. In the book, The Body Keeps Score, written by author, researcher, and trauma psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, he writes, somatic symptoms from which no clear physical basis can be found are ubiquitous in traumatized children and adults. They include chronic back and neck pain, fibromyalgia, migraines, digestive problems, spastic colon, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue, and some forms of asthma. Traumatized children have 50 times the rate of asthma as their non-traumatized peers. Studies have shown that many children and adults with fatal asthma attacks were not aware of having breathing problems before that attack. The evidence studied in trauma psychology has long held firm the idea that trauma manifests physiologically in the body and not just solely in the mind. We have everyday language that we use to demonstrate this fact. Something or someone upsetting makes you sick. Feeling of fear might make your skin crawl. Disappointment or sadness makes your heart sink. Trauma and its feelings of unsafety in the body cause real physiological symptoms to present. This is a feature that helps us stay alive, thanks to our autonomic nervous system. This system in the body has two branches. The sympathetic nervous system, which is in charge of your fight or flight or freeze response to threats, real or perceived, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is in charge of down-regulating after the threat subsides. We talk about these two systems consistently because of their physiological connections. Your parasympathetic nervous system is your best friend in terms of resting and digesting after a meal. If your body believes you are in real danger, again, whether you are or not, it's not going to digest your food optimally, and we're more likely to store. As our guest today, Meg Bowman, puts it in an article she wrote on her Substack, your nervous system is scanning constantly, planning, and preparing for danger. When that happens, digestion is no longer the top priority. Here's the problem. A lot of us are not usually literally running from danger. And yet our bodies are still in fight, flight, or freeze mode. You might be right now as you're listening, and you'd be among the majority. The demands of our modern world, the constant 24-hour news cycle, the persistent national and global chaos and disconnect mean that our bodies are often perceiving threats all day long, even in moments where we're completely safe. In other words, shit is fucked up. Our bodies know it, and we feel it. Stress and trauma are critical topics in the nutrition world because in the way they affect our real physical bodies and not just our minds. We're often helping clients navigate changes in their lives, their health, and their routines that are emotionally challenging, if not extremely painful. If clients do not feel safe, know how to recognize when they feel unsafe, or know how to regulate their bodies so they can signal safety, they will not accomplish the changes we might be working on together. This is the basis of polyvagal theory, and it is crucial that we as professionals know how to use this concept with our clients who come to us with complex cases. If we want them to do the work, we need to create an environment of safety and give them the tools to help their bodies recognize it. Today, I'm talking with Meg Bowman, author of the book This Is Your Body on Trauma and co founder of Clinician's Incubator, a program that offers coaching and support for providers looking to start their own practice. Meg and I talked about trauma and nutrition, the basics of polyvagal theory, building a toolkit for clients, managing our own stress and deregulation in sessions with clients, and so much more. If you're an emerging CNS practitioner, or you're looking to grow your understanding of polyvagal theory to do deeper work with your clients, or you're just looking into learning more about the physiological aspects of trauma, this episode is for you. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today, I am so excited. I probably say that every interview, but I really, really am. We have Meg Bowman today, and she is the author of This Is Your Body on Trauma. I saw her come up on LinkedIn and grab the book. I'm like, oh yes, everybody needs to get at least a piece of this book if they aren't going to reach out and grab it themselves. Thank you so much for joining us today, Meg. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm super excited.
Thank you. So Meg wears a lot of different hats. And so I'm not going to go through them. I am going to turn this over to Meg so she can explain to us her journey, how she evolved into this amazing practitioner with all these different hats, and share a little bit about her journey and story with us. Thank you, Meg.
I would love to do that because I always find my story a little bit probably very predictable for many CNSs, but also a little bit amusing. So today, where did we get to? Today, I'm one of the co-founders of Clinician's Incubator, so we do a lot of CNS supervision. We also have a national private practice that's called Nutrition Hive. And then we also have a health coaching certification for providers called Nested Health Coach Certification. And then in addition to that, I'm also on Substack. So there's a lot of things that kind of happen here. But how did I get here? I got here through stress and trauma. That's how I got here. I think so many CNSs, it's such a common story to hear that, we get sick or somebody that we know gets sick and then we go back to school. For me, I was working in marketing and PR. And I'd had a lot of kind of really challenging situations in my life, but the really crux of it was I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 13, 14 years ago, and was incredibly lucky that I think the day after I got my diagnosis, I landed on Liz Lipsky's book, Digestive Wellness.
All right.
And I read that book immediately, front to back. She knows this, by the way. She knows that this was my path. And the second that I got to the back of the book and I saw that she was faculty at MUIH, it was MUIH at the time. They now have they're a different, with a different university. And I said, aha, this makes sense. So I think within 2 to 3 months, I was back in school. And I really understood from the first day of going back to school that I wanted to figure out a way to support myself. I didn't immediately know that I was going to do this as a career.
Fair enough.
That came later. But I was really convinced that, stress and trauma played a huge role in my story. And so from the beginning, I was really intrigued by that. So, my specialties are mental health and GI, which are basically the same thing a lot of times. And yeah, and here we are.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you. And honestly, like, shoe fits.
Yeah, right?
Shoe fits,
Yeah.
right? But thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I'm like, nah. And you find your way here from your experiences.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
it tracks. When I was reading your book, I really feel like I just kept nodding. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And this is something that's not taught in school.
Yeah.
It's not. Sure, we have the what is it called, where the interview style, where you can help them make changes and move them forward and kind of understand more. And of course, in functional medicine, we're asking the 10,000 questions to get deeper. And we might ask the mental health questions. Are you stressed? Are you sleeping? But it really doesn't really dig into the foundation, right?
Yeah.
In my practice, what you're speaking in here, I refer to it like the operating system. You got to pick the operating system, and that's the highest upstream. So I know a lot of my listeners, they hear me say cascades all the time, right? So I'm trying to find a cascade, or what is this supplement going to push? And so when we're looking at the highest upstream, so what is that top part of that cascade? It's the operating system.
Yeah.
And you go and explain that beautifully inside of your book. Would you mind explaining your book a little bit and coming into it? I would love to highlight it, because I really do feel any practitioner, I don't care your background, if you are working with people and you want those long-term changes and to get those shifts, oh, this is it. This is the magic.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, so the book is really, it is about nutrition for trauma, but it is really about polyvagal theory and how nutrition fits into that lens. I first encountered polyvagal theory, when I was still in school. I was lucky enough back in the day, this was pre-COVID, this is in the dark ages, probably people don't even remember when we would do CEs in person. But there was this organization called PESI, and I knew I wanted to work in mental health nutrition. And I was like, oh man, I really need an understanding of, how therapists work and how this all works. And so I would go to therapy CEs, and I was able to get them super cheap because I would show up an hour early and I'd sign everybody in, and I'd stay an hour late and I'd sign everybody out. And so I think within the first 2 years of practice, I had 200 hours of CEs, therapy CEs.
Wow.
And so a lot of people were in that's really the early days of talking about polyvagal theory, but really the understanding of it is the language of safety in the body. And so how do we experience safety, and where are those cues coming from? I think us as nutrition providers, we're very, very, very well trained to send signals of safety inside the body. Everything we do is, really targeted to sending those signals of safety inside the body. To your point, I think what school misses often is that there's also kind of nervous system signals of safety that are coming outside our bodies and in between relationships. And so we have to balance all of that, because, if we are trying to do something with a client and it is sending our client's nervous system into the frickin' stratosphere, because it makes them so anxious or it makes them so stressed. The cascade of that, the downstream effects of that are going to be problematic, not beneficial. So it's really kind of balancing all of those pieces for me.
Definitely. I know I want everybody to read your book, but can we just deep dive a little bit more? So for the new CNSs that are out there and they're peaked now, a shift that I see in the nutrition world, right? Because I started doing this about 15 years ago, and we're taught, because I went to school as a RD to start, we're taught blanketed approaches, right? We're talking elimination diets or a DASH diet. Gosh, I can't even remember how long it's been since I've said that type of diet, a DASH diet, or, any of these other diets as a blanketed approach. And when you start working with them, they're really stressful sometimes, right? They're already dealing with a lot of medical things. And then you want this blanketed approach that just alienates them from life, really, family and everything. And that does not feel safe, right? And you really go back and forth. So it's really evolved more to personalized nutrition. And I think the world is getting on board with that and saying, okay, doing a low histamine diet forever is probably not the best idea, or a low FODMAP forever. We should probably tune it and understand the person a little bit more, right? Step 2 or 3. And so when someone's coming in listening now, like, oh, well, now I have another layer. Now I got to think of vagal energy stress with food. What does that look like? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So I would say if we really want to kind of get it down to, what do we do on Monday morning? There's a couple larger things that I would think about. Number one, I always recommend that we first, with any new client, we build a toolkit for the hard days. That comes first. Right now, we're talking the 10th of January, and everybody is into their New Year's resolutions, and their New Year's resolutions are, I really have beef with New Year's resolutions, but they're these huge, I must fix all of these things about myself. And maybe you can do it for a few days. That's that whole joke of the whole 15, but it's not a sustainable approach to come in and say, let me do all these huge things. So when I work with somebody, at first, I'm trying to build the toolkit of what does this look like on your hardest day? And then when we build that, we really build it along a spectrum. And the spectrum goes all the way. This is a Deb Dana theory, who's a polyvagal therapist, but from stretch to stress. So as an example, if I'm working with a client, I don't really use SMART goals. I know that's evidence-based. I know that's what we're taught. I use stretch to stress goals. So as an example, if I have a client who, one of the goals that we're working on is we're trying to increase polyphenols because we know that supports mood. What I'm going to do when I make a plan is we're going to make a plan from the easiest possible iteration on the worst day through their best day. So an example of this would be, if you have a horrible day, you had road rage, your boss yelled at you, your fridge died, like all kinds of things were happening. Friend, you're going to order pizza and you are going to add vegetables to the pizza and you're going to get a Caesar salad alongside it. And guess what? You have just eaten your vegetables for the day, because it's not going to be forever. It's one day, and it'll get you functional and back to life. And then if you have a day where everything's going well and you can go through your cookbooks and you're excited to go shop, you go to the farmer's market, you get all these fresh vegetables, you can go home and make, an amazing dish. That takes a lot more bandwidth. So we really work along that spectrum, but I try to make whatever that top version is, the most well executed. I try to make sure that it's still a stretch and not a stress.
Love it.
Because if it's truly a stress, the person either won't do it at all, or they'll do it once and then never again. Yep.
1,000%. We really have to meet the clients exactly where they're at. And I really feel like that's where we get in. We, as in CNSs, right? This is a part that I know I hold super true to my heart, or I get the most excited about being in this position as a CNS. It's because the doctors don't have time for that. They're not trained in the bedside of that or the interviewing level of that. And honestly, when you can hit that level of understanding, the why, the trauma why, the what makes them click, and you see their operating system and all of it just kind of floods, all right, I got you. now I get it. Now I understand the stress level. Now I understand how we're going to push it. And just as you're relating it to food or just the changes in general with the food of either, we got to stretch it. We got to build our bandwidth. We have to build the capacity inside the body. It doesn't just do that. We got to coax it kind of there. But if you go too fast and you hit a stress, well, now the inflammation, even if it's not physical, right? The mental, it's going to come in. We're going to have that barrier and we're going to have to take a breath and start over, which is okay too. It is okay to start over. That's
totally
okay too.
Fine. Yeah, I think the thing that I find often that maybe people misunderstand or they don't quite get is, we look at potentially like the example I gave you, pizza and Caesar salad, right? Delivered, to your doorstep from where? And we might look at that as a nutrition provider and be like, oh, that's not quite the execution, I want them to do. But the thing that we got to keep in mind is, these quote unquote imperfect stretches, the more the client gets used to those, the more the client is able to employ those, the faster we get back to the way that we want them to eat. We talk about that as pendulation a lot, right? The understanding that when we're in a tough spot, eventually we're going to go the other direction. Feelings aren't forever. And the more that we can care for ourselves in those tough spots, the faster it will be that we will get back to bandwidth, get back to ventral in polyvagal language. And I think that's just so beneficial.
1,000%.
Yeah.
It's building the person's confidence first, because they have to do the work. And if they don't trust themselves to do the work, or they can't have that conversation with themselves on those tough days, like, all right, we're not doing 100. We're going to do 10% today. That's what we have to give. And I'm going to show up for myself that 10%. Yep. And that's enough. And yes, anytime you choose yourself and those little things and build that confidence, you get the alignment with your body, that mind, body, and soul. Like, what you're really doing is helping people really align that with themselves to get that confidence and that understanding and that alignment. And that's everything, in my opinion, right? You can do anything with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other main take homes or anything you would like to share additionally that maybe we didn't cover from your book for practitioners or CNSs?
I don't know that this is necessarily in the book. It might be. I don't remember. But I will say, a lot of times I get early CNSs who come, people that are still in school, they come to info sessions at Clinician's Incubator and they want to talk about, what their path looks like to becoming a CNS. And a lot of them ask me, what was the hardest thing for you to learn? I worked in ad agencies, for crying out loud. This is really different, and they're expecting me to say, oh, memorizing the biochemical pathways, biochemistry, or the pathophysiology, or, understanding supplementation and how that works, or, any of that. That is not my reality. My reality is the hardest thing for me to learn was tolerating my own distress in session and being aware of my own nervous system in session and not letting that dictate my responses to the client, being so aware of, oh, the client is crying. This makes me super uncomfortable. I want to move on. No, that's maybe not the right thing to do. So I think for me, this, as much as this is the way that I work professionally with clients, it's also something that has greatly influenced how I managed my own nervous system when I'm working, and huge benefits to that.
Do you have and it's okay if you don't, but do you have, when you're starting to feel that way inside of a session, do you have like a cue word or something that you do that kind of checks your body when you're feeling?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't necessarily have I don't have a word. I definitely have a thing.
What's the thing?
So I didn't realize this until COVID hit. And then before COVID, I had an in-person office. I did all my sessions in person. When COVID hit, I got rid of the office. And right now, you're seeing me work from my home. And it wasn't until I did all my sessions online that I realized I have a real strong physical cue. I have a couple of them. So number one is my shoulders will meet my ears.
Okay.
When I'm stressed, just right up. And the other one that I realized, because I'm a big hand talker, I realized that I hitchhike. Like I put my thumb out and I hitchhike. And when I started realizing that I have those cues, I literally see them happening. And I'm like, okay, there we are. That's where my nervous system is right now. Is this the right response for the situation that I'm in? No, it's actually not. What do I want to do in this moment to get back to presence? And what can I do to feel more safe? And sometimes that's me pendulating. That's me saying, oh, you're saying something so important, client. Let me just take a minute to type this. I don't want to lose this. And it has more to do with my need to calm my own nervous system than it actually does what's happening in session.
Thank you so much for sharing that. When you were first talking about, understanding where you are with the client, it was already kind of giving me cues of course, like when you sit across from someone, we are their mirror now. And we are it's a two-way effect, whether we're the coach and they're the client or not, it still goes two ways. There's no stopping that. And then how cool that literally now we go online and we literally have a mirror of ourselves. And now we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like that's how I look. That's how I am learning myself now too from that mirror.
For sure. I mean, there's so many things. I can watch my cheeks get red and I'm like, oh, there it is. There's a lot of benefits that I've found to it, things that I just sincerely did not know about myself.
I was there with you too. Like my face would show everything. And my mentor is like, hey, Jena, hold that face and go look in the mirror. Like when he would be mirroring me, I'm like, oh, this is huge. And like my thing now is I repeat love, and I've had this meditation now for a long time, but just I want that energy of love. I want them to feel love. I want to be in love. And that's how I want to transmute the uncomfort that's starting to happen. And so I repeat love and I soften my face and I soften my shoulders because right, they're going to come up.
Yep.
And I have found like that puts me in that, like it can shift the whole energy, drop it down and gives it that openness.
Mm-hmm.
But you're the first person I've actually talked about this piece of being the practitioner and how we have to handle our side of things, because when you do start getting into the trauma of someone, like it's not just about uncovering that for the person. You got to know how to support that afterwards.
Yeah.
Other than you're digging up dirt that don't belong there, and that could be not helpful in the long run.
And it really, I mean, to your point, sessions really, those mirror neurons, man, they be strong. And so what they're feeling, we are feeling, and likewise. And, it just takes it to really a whole different level of practice. But it really required for me a lot of tolerating my discomfort to get there. Because, that fight or flight, kind of, let's get into sympathetic activation. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. Let me fix it for them. It's a really strong biological drive. And so to stay present, to stay in ventral, so that they can find that, that's a challenge.
Yeah, that holding space.
Yeah.
Sometimes just being quiet.
Yeah.
Let it feel, let it deep, let them think, because they may have never had that conversation, or they have it with a therapist. So coming from a nutritionist, they're kind of like, wait a second, this feels different. You're actually, I think this is where, obviously I love this field, but I think we're in such a beautiful spot, because we're not a therapist, but we have to pull into those pieces, but then we have tools. I think we have
Yeah.
way more tools than a therapist, right? We can change
Our work is super
but we
therapeutic.
can change their
Yeah.
food. We know how to change their neurotransmitters. We have supplements. We have red light there, whatever, right? We have so many things at our fingertips that when you say it openly to us, we're not just thinking, what are we taught to move you through to think differently? We're saying, this is now I have an understanding of your entire operating system and how your body cascades, what is talking, and where I get to support you in a very specific, fine-tuned way.
Yeah, our toolkit is huge. Our toolkit of safety
Mm-hmm.
signals is truly huge. And to your point, it really does go beyond nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
It goes far beyond that. I use a lot of biofeedback with clients, and I find that to be really helpful. And lately I've been working with a lot of clients with, gut-directed hypnotherapy. I don't do it myself, but doing a lot of care coordination with those kind of approaches, because it really is a mind, body, spirit thing. And when we try and divide that up, it doesn't work well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to totally sidestep for a moment. Can you tell me what the gut hypnotherapy is? Because you just piqued my interest. Like, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started encountering it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There's a good deal of research in the gut-directed hypnotherapy and gut-directed CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, for those that may not be familiar. And a lot of the research was being done in IBS. And so the idea was, can we kind of get people into more of a trance state and induce relaxation? And what does that do in the gut? Because IBS is a gut brain kind of thing. Can we do that? Where I really got into it was not this summer, but last summer, 2024. I started seeing some studies that they were seeing decreases in inflammatory cytokines, not just in IBS, but in IBD. And I have Crohn's myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of foods that they don't work for me. And so I ended up I did 9 months of gut-directed hypnotherapy with a psychologist.
Okay.
And I got back so many foods that my body would not tolerate before. My symptoms decreased by 80%.
Wow.
I mean, it was just a huge, huge, huge thing. And, talking about tolerating your own distress, that's a huge toolkit there. And not catastrophizing. Sometimes when you eat something and you feel that first twinge and you're like, oh no!
Yeah, the
And
cascade,
then
I'll never get back.
it's going to be horrible, right? And then all the adrenaline and all the whole HPA axis is happening, and our gut hears that and feels that, and then we get disaster pants. But that was my experience of it. So I that's my number one recommendation for GI clients that I see is let's see if we can do the therapy or an app. There are apps, Happy Inside and Nerva. But I personally didn't love the apps. The actual being with a human, that for me was huge.
I think so too. Goes right back to that mirroring, right back to that you're not alone, right back to that safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't feel safety with computers. We feel anxiety. It's work, it's social, it's buy this, it's bombardment. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Also with
pleasure.
us today. So we do a case study, and I know you've prepared a case study, and I know I can't wait to hear your case and how you practice. Let's get into it.
Okay.
I'm going to keep it onto you so you can give us some backstory. And so the backstory of the client. And then the first question is, where did traditional medicine leave off? How far did they get?
Yeah, great question. So the client that I want to talk about was a 35-year-old male with a recent exacerbation of anxiety due to some family stuff that was going on. But at the same time, I mean, this will be right up your alley. At the same time, we had extensive exacerbation of IBS symptoms. We had a ton of postprandial nausea. We had bowel urgency after meals. We'd actually lost 10 pounds unintentionally because eating was so hard. And there was just a lot going on. We were probably, about 200 to 300 calories below where we needed to be on any given day. And it was interfering with work, sleep, dating. As you can imagine, if you don't know if you're going to have disaster pants or not, like going out to eat feels kind of fraught. So we had really extensive challenges here. We had generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, and a couple other things, long history of trauma. We also had something in earlier the year, food poisoning, norovirus,
Okay.
something. Not sure. Didn't go to the doctor for it. A couple days of pretty acute GI distress. No fever with it, but that's all the information I was able to kind of pull out. We had something.
Gotcha.
And the GI stuff happened after it. But we do, like, this guy had a very long-term history. He remembered, in school, if he would have a test or they would have a recital or a sports meet or whatnot, he would have a lot of stomach aches as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I met him on the referral from his psychologist, who I work with pretty extensively. It's a mentor of mine. And he was also at that point seeing a psychiatrist for medication management. The psychiatrist is actually an integrative psychiatrist. And so this gentleman had, they'd been trying out all kinds of medication. They had very smartly done one of those gene sites, Genomind. I don't remember which one they did, but one of the gene testing to see which medications might be appropriate. And the psychiatrist had recommended a repair, like a GI repair. So he had recommended, bone broth, glutamine. There were some general probiotics, DGL, zinc, carnosine. There's like 8 different things. Yeah,
the basics.
And the guy came in having not started any of those.
Okay.
And I think the thing that, I think you might, the listeners might be expecting, how did traditional, medicine fail this guy? They were on the right path. Right? They were doing the right things. I think where this client particularly struggled is he didn't feel like he could access any of those things because it was too much. It was too much all at once. Too many medication changes, way too many supplements, super overwhelming. In the same breath, the psychologist is really working on getting him to just eat enough. And so I would imagine that it felt like a fire hose coming at somebody who is already deep into sympathetic activation on a daily basis. Like, I asked him, when was the last time you felt safe? He couldn't answer me.
Oh.
So that's the client. What do you want to know?
I want to know, if you were in a room with him, would you have given him a hug?
Oh, if I was in a room and I would ask, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would too.
We were doing, to your point earlier about motivational interviewing, I was doing a lot of reflections that were like, yeah, no kidding, you feel like that. We were doing a lot of, trying to reflect back and empathy and validation with him. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you don't start with that alignment, we're not going to move forward. If his brain and his body don't trust each other, you're never going to move forward. So it sounded like traditional medicine is where a lot of traditional medicine is right now. They understand there's more. They understand the gut is playing a role. They understand the basics that shouldn't cause any negativity, right? Like the bone broth and that kind of the supplements that you recommended. But what they're still missing is the time, the coaching, how to bring it all together, how to understand the biochemistry and what to do to either build the capacity or turn that cascade to go upwards, or, the next piece is to actually get them to the end.
Yeah, and I think it was a very untargeted repair. It was a generic repair,
Yeah.
and this is
Yeah.
where that personalization really gets in. I mean, I was impressed because usually there can be resistance, about that kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
But and I actually ended up talking to the psychiatrist. That was, we did a phone call, and he's like, "So, what did you think of this?" And I'm like, "Oh,
So
crap."
proud of himself. Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of a challenge. And I was able to come back and say, "You know what? I really appreciate I can see where you're going here. I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the concept of a GI repair approach with this gentleman. As you know, he's super anxious and he's only willing to do one thing at a time. I wonder what you thought about." And then I kind of walked him through kind of my 4 curiosity target opportunities. And he ended up agreeing to let me take the ship in terms of supplementation, which was really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And I just want to stop here and highlight something that I see all the time. And obviously, you're showcasing it right now. In traditional medicine, and how we're kind of designed to think is like, we want to get to the end. We are jumping to the end.
Yeah.
And so 90% of the time, a physician is going to say, oh, just try some probiotics, or hey, just try this glutamine. And sure, we might get a little bit somewhere, right? But in general, you cannot jump to the end.
Yeah.
It won't work. Like you can't just jump there. And if you don't know how to think through, then jumping to the end and giving a bunch of bone broth or probiotics, it could actually make them a lot more anxious, a lot more nervous, and actually kind of just give a huge flare up. And now you've lost them forever, and you've lost them for functional medicine. And then the nutritionist is going to have to talk them off the edge to get them back on track.
Yeah.
You see that too?
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. I was working with this client, and Crohn's on all of the things, and so highly sensitive. We could not even, we did a stool test, but we couldn't even get like a fourth of a capsule of probiotics in them. And
yeah, it doesn't
and
surprise
it was
me.
just flaring, could not detox, right? We had to go to the skin first and just like Molly do them and no herbs. Like it was a process. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because every time we get him to feeling a little bit good, he'd throw in a probiotic, or he'd throw in some glutamine, because that's what the doctors told him in the beginning. And that's what he's reading, is where we have to go. So then every time he did that, it was like we were finally just starting to stabilize. And then we just slid back 3 spots. I'm like, oh, I know I can't say your name right now. Like, we can't jump to the end. Like, we got to breathe. And so he finally went back to his psychiatrist and got put on a medication that kind of dropped him down for a second. He's like, all right, Jenna.
Sure.
All right. Like, I'm with you. I said, but he really needed that traditional application, even at a tiniest dose, just to kind of help bring it down so we could do the gut work and the other work to balance. And then we came off that medication and we were able to move forward. So together is key, not the therapist doing nutrition and not the nutrition doing the psychologicals, but yeah, just to bring that full circle too.
Together is really helpful. Yeah. And I think you'll see we were actually playing off each other a little bit in this case. One of the things that I was really curious about, and I did not have a ton of great data. We knew that the client himself said that this feels situational, which to me that feels, I hate the word psychosomatic. I hate it so bad, but that's what that is, right? It's a gut brain trauma response, a physiological response to anxiety. So he felt like a lot of the gut stuff was situational. But he also had lactose intolerance. And there are times that he's like, I feel pretty steady and I'm still getting some reactivity. And so we were trying to figure out, what exactly that was. And he didn't give me a lot of data. he said, maybe there's some challenges when I eat leftovers, after a couple days. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And he had a childhood history of some atopic march, diseases. And then he had that, whatever that was with the GI norovirus, food poisoning. Who the frick knows what that was? And so one of the things on my list was like, might this be a little bit histamine driven? Is that a potential, And so I was running through it with a psychiatrist and saying, I really appreciate your supplement approach, but I'm really seeing evidence that there's a potential here that this is kind of post-infectious, at least in part post-infectious IBS that might be a little bit histamine driven. The psychiatrist ended up prescribing hydroxyzine, which is an H1 inhibitor. So he was actually getting not mast cell support, but it was blocking the H1 receptors. And so to your point, sometimes we need something that's just going to bring it down a little bit. And that did help quite a lot. But I ended up giving him, because I only was allowed to do one thing.
Okay. One thing
at a time. As many people with GI stuff. I mean, I'm the same, so I can't pick on people for that. But one thing at a time. And so I was like, what do I want to do? And they were still playing with the medications. So I didn't feel really comfortable doing an adaptogen because, there's so many interactions and I didn't know where we were going to land on medications. So there's a lot of things that were just off the table. So I chose to go the direction of histamine. And so we did some Dow. And then that he tolerated really well. And so afterwards we added a little bit of quercetin. And we played with that for a little bit. And we didn't get a lot of impact with it. I'm like, this is super interesting. Okay, let's think about this. So this isn't the thing at all. And so what I ended up doing was I didn't think about FODMAPs with him because he would have just hyperfixated. I couldn't do a histamine, low histamine diet because he would have hyperfixated and those foods would be dangerous foods for the rest of his life. And so what I ended up doing was a single probiotic because, again, this guy wants to do one thing at a time. So I chose a psychobiotic that has better outcomes in stress-related GI symptoms.
Okay.
So ProbioMood, pure encapsulations.
Okay.
It's the two Roselle 52, those two probiotics that are extensively studied. And amazingly, just with that support, that gut-brain, support of that probiotic, within 6 weeks of taking it, we had stopped the nausea and postprandial bowel urgency. That had gone away completely. We weren't anxiety-free, but we were anxiety-free as it related to, I can't go out to eat. I can't leave the house. I can't I can't eat this food lest it do XYZ. So that's what we did from a bottom up perspective. The other thing that I did, I really talked him through, especially when I was thinking it was histamine, a starving mast cell is a degranulating mast cell, my friend. I need to get you enough calories. We just have to do this. So we ended up working with really kind of his own nervous system. What is possible when you're in sympathetic overdrive? And for him, chewing mixed texture things were really problematic. So things like Kate Farms, we did Kate Farms 1.4 to get him more calories. So just that type of protein shake really helped him get in calories, applesauce, yogurt. He really needed a specific texture that felt possible when we're in fight or flight, which I see a lot, that people maybe without textural issues, when they feel fine, when they're under stress, all of a sudden we have textures that are easier. I find it kind of fascinating.
1,000%.
But that's what we did.
That is awesome. And just to validate, I see that too.
Do you?
One of the first things, I don't do blanket. I mean, obviously, I don't like doing blanketed approaches. I don't like taking foods out if I don't have to. But if I see that stress response coming in or foods are starting to change, I go right into those soft foods. In that fight or flight, the gut's not digesting. It's not absorbing.
Totally
it's
true.
not in the correct operating system to manage that. And so the one pot meals or the soft foods and the creamed foods, they are gold.
Yep.
And you can get everything in and get that body up, and it's right there
It
with you.
works.
I see that also. It works.
It works. And we had a lot of conversations around, right at the moment, fed is best. You already lost 10 pounds unintentionally. Fed is best. So, long term, we will look at what does nutrition look like for you, and that's really different than what it's going to look like today. Today, if what you can get in is a frozen meal, I'm going to be like, yes, awesome, let's do that.
Yep.
So it really, the number of things we did was not huge, but they were well targeted, and eventually, I didn't get there right away, really did kind of change his reality.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you really didn't need to do additional testing
I
or
didn't.
anything like that.
No.
He was just able to kind of come, and working with his other physician, we're able to kind of get into what he needed. Just by you being you and asking the right questions is really what uncovered what needed to come next. It was able to be that simple.
For sure. And we had a lot of, would I have done it differently if he gave me permission? Maybe. But, maybe if I was allowed to do more than one thing, would I have done testing? Yeah, probably.
Fair enough.
But I knew that if I did that, he was going to hyperfixate on it.
Yep.
Anything that was weird. And so there was a lot that just didn't feel possible. And so then it was like, okay, if we go really back to basics, what is possible here? And we spent a lot of time, like those are the things that we did when he was at a session, but inside session, we spent a lot of time talking about the stress continuum and what that looks like with food. And we spent a lot of time talking about what does your toolkit look like when you're underwater, and building those lists of foods and building the grocery shopping, apps and building all of that stuff. We did all of that work too.
Awesome. Would you say that it was that type of coaching inside the sessions that was the turning point for your client? Or do you find it was like the probiotic that finally got the gut and the brain connected that was the turning point?
I think it was the probiotic plus the placebo of the sessions. I mean, it's really, I think, important to not nocebo clients.
Yep.
And so I did go into, this is the probiotic that I'm recommending. Let me walk you through a couple of studies. Let me walk you through what the results are. What we can expect to see is in this study, it was an 8-week study, but by 4 weeks, people were already feeling the effects. Like I was really actively going in and trying to, everybody that takes a new probiotic, they might get a little gas the first 3 days, but it's going to go away. It always goes away. I was trying to do all of those things to make it kind of as smooth of a process and tell him what I expected to happen and the positive effects that it would have. So yes, I absolutely think that the probiotics sent messages of safety, but I think the delivery also did.
1,000%. Like his brain was obviously trying to grab onto something, right?
Yeah.
Like with anxieties, where is safe? Where can I go? And you gave him a path to safety based on research.
Yeah.
How phenomenal. How therapeutic.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to build. Like we're meeting next week and we're going to continue to build on this as he feels better. And, I really would like to do a little bit of a gut repair in there. I think it would be helpful. But we're just going to take it really slow because that's the pace that his nervous system needs to go right now.
And just because I'm curious, because of course histamine was going through my head too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever happened with the histamines? Like,
he really didn't have, much, if any, differences with either the quercetin or the Dow. I'm still really suspicious because the hydroxyzine for him, the H1 medication, really
Is he
helped.
still on
So
it?
I'm suspicious. He's still on it,
Okay.
but I could never tie back. Like, I know histamine, sometimes you're like, oh, 24 hours later, there might be a reaction. I could never, from the perspective of like a food mood or food symptom journal, I could never tie it back to any of the higher histamine foods. So do I think there's a potential that that's playing a role? Yes, absolutely. If I had my druthers, would he still be on that stuff? Yes, but one thing at a time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take what I can get.
Oh, totally.
How's
Totally.
that
And
for
that,
an answer?
yeah, 1000%. I threw you on the spot there because just I was curious. Histamine it just plays a role in so many of our brain clients too, and our gut clients. And I feel like it's overlooked a lot. So
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I think he's got a real I mean, with the post-infectious stuff, and I didn't even mention he had a couple concussions, like, in
Mm,
childhood too. So there's a lot of kind of gut-brain
sure.
potential there. Um, but it didn't track. I've seen many times where it is the thing. Um,
Yeah.
Not this one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for going through that case. That was wonderful. And we got to touch on quite a few things with this case that we haven't in other sessions. One part that you had to be really, really mindful of was the approach and what he was going to attach onto long term, right? And that is huge. You just did such a good job. But that is huge. Like when all of your tools are taken away, you're like, whew, I can't do the testing he's going to attach. I can't do a blanketed approach. Like I got to be real intentional and understanding and direct. It's an art. Nicely done.
It's a real challenge, and I will say for me, this came from, when I got out of school, I didn't want to work with eating disorders at all. This gentleman doesn't have an eating disorder, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted depression, anxiety, ADHD, let's do this. And I was talking to my mentor who was a psychologist and telling her this, and she laughed in my face. She's like, ah, that's funny that you think that you could somehow divide those things, But I really do think working with clients with eating disorders, honestly, that was the best training for mental health nutrition because it really taught me how, a brain that is in fight or flight, that's outside of ventral, can attach on to the simplest things, right? Oh, now I'm taking a multivitamin. That means I don't have to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brain just started thinking that way. And so, when I work with a client, especially a client with anxiety or OCD, I am really cautious and I really think through what are they going to find on the internet if they Google it? To your
Mm-hmm.
point from earlier, what might this do? What might they attach to? And it really helps to think that direction because again, then you're not feeding the HPA axis input even further.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would be a myth that you would like to debunk for us today?
I honestly, I think I'm going to go back to what we just talked about, which is, I think, a myth that is very common that I see on social media. It's never stated outright, but it is implicitly stated.
Okay.
It is that by changing the biochemistry and the pathophys by itself, we can change mental health. That is the only thing that we need to do to improve mental health is to give the nutritional supports for neurotransmitter production. It is to make sure that polyphenols are in there. It is to make sure your vitamin D level is not 13. It is to do all those things. It is a balance. It's a balance between how much can I provide that support without overly stressing the system so much that it's going to collapse.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to share with our audience today?
Oh, I would just say there is a growing group of people on Substack in the nutrition space. So I always encourage people to head over there. I write under Nutrition Needs Nuance, but there's a lot of people that are starting to, talk about nutrition on Substack, and it really is a very supportive, friendly community. So especially for those people who might, when you mention social media, and building a practice on social media, they kind of grimace at you. I really don't want to do. We have somebody that does our Facebook and Instagram. Thank you. I don't want to do that. Substack is a very different place and it's a very different feeling. So I would just recommend people to check it out and join me on Substack.
So I've never heard of that. Can you tell me a little bit more about just what is it?
Yeah, so Substack, if I were to really put it in different language, it is kind of a blogging platform, if you will. It's kind of like Medium in a way, but it's frankly a place for more nuance. You're writing longer things. It isn't these short, quippy, you can put notes in there, which are short phrases, but it is really longer articles that people write. And so it's the ability to really communicate thoroughly a thought versus kind of what we would see on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok.
Cool.
And I love it for that reason.
Awesome. Yeah, that resonates. I just started doing social media.
Did you?
This year,
Yeah.
I can't say this year, it's 2026. So maybe within the last 6 months. But one of the biggest hiccups I was finding is when you do this work, we don't do blanketed things,
No.
right? I'm not going to tell somebody, go eat some nuts.
No.
You can't do it. So to narrow something down, I'm like, this is impossible. Impossible.
It's completely, that's why I landed my Substack handle is Nutrition Needs Nuance, because I cannot do that.
I can't do it.
I can't do it. Doesn't exist.
My VA does it. I'll do a whole video. It's going to be 10, 20 things. And she goes, okay, I'll try to take this one out and then we'll do this one and we'll do it through the week, because there's no way I will not sit there and be like, do this and this. No, you can't. You got to. I love that. The nuance.
I so appreciate that though, because I think that is the truth. I think the truth is far more complex than these quippy little things that we see. TikTok hacks, so yeah, I would just invite people to join.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to look into it. Meg, thank you again so much for being here, for sharing all of your hats and your very unique approach to working with clients. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Meg, for bringing your expertise on this incredibly meaningful and important topic. This industry needs you and the work that you do, and your commitment to helping CNS professionals deepen the work that they do is leading to stronger relationships with clients and even bigger changes in clients' lives. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in today for this episode of CNS Unfiltered. Check out Meg's book, This Is Your Body on Trauma, and go read her other work on her Substack, Nutrition Needs Nuance. If you're a CNS, follow at Clinician Incubator on Instagram. If you're interested in working with me, check out innateclinicalnutrition.com. Attention CNSs. CNS Unfiltered has a big announcement about next week's episode. We're launching a quarterly series called CNS Unfiltered Journal Club, where I sit down with certified nutrition specialists who have published research in peer-reviewed journals. Together, we'll break down their papers, talk about the science behind the findings, and translate what the research actually means for clinical practice. My hope is that this series gives practitioners, students, and curious listeners a deeper look into the research being produced by the CNS community and how it applies to real-world patient care. So make sure you're subscribed, because next week we'll kick off our first CMS Unfiltered Journal Club episode. If you're a future or current CMS or functional medicine practitioner, medical professional, or functional medicine patient, we want to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or success stories, send us an email at cmsunfiltered@gmail.com for a chance to be featured on a future episode. If you're a clinical nutritionist or other functional medicine practitioner and you're interested in being interviewed, click the link in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. Follow at Innate Clinical Nutrition so you don't miss a new episode. And share this with a colleague or a classmate who might need to hear it. Once again, I'm Jenna Salisbury, and remember to listen to your gut.